Right. Episode 2. Listen to the Drummer, 1975. Let's go. Hit the theme. Sup? So, now that you've actually been introduced to that theme tune, I hope you all love it and download it because it's amazing and it's going to be the number one song of the year. But yeah, we're back for episode 2. How we're all doing? I've just finished uni, so I've just been catching up on anime because I'm such a nerd. And yeah, that's what I've been doing today. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're not going to talk about One Punch Man. We're going to be talking about the 1975's new album, Notes on a Conditional Form. Probably one of the most anticipated albums of the year. Yeah, up there for sure. Probably the biggest that's come out so far. In case anyone doesn't know, 1975, big band from Britain. This is their 4th release, coming back off the back from their most recent album, A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships, which I actually quite liked. I gave it a 7 out of 10. It was my favourite album by them so far. I thought their first album was quite confused as to what it wanted to be. There was influences everywhere. I did think their second album was more focused, but I thought there was a lot of dull tracks on there, a lot of duds. And then Inquiry came about. It was more focused, more centric. Still some duds, as they've seemed to prove that they make as many duds as they do bangers. But yeah, the songs on that were really good. The lyrical content and the production was really cool. For a pop album, I quite enjoyed it. Solid 7 out of 10. And then this one is supposed to be made out of the same sessions, I believe, as the one before. They were supposed to be a third one, and they wrote so much stuff that they dropped it as 2 albums, and this is the second one. And first impressions, it's very different. I don't think anyone saw this coming. It's hard to believe that they did come out of the same sessions. I feel like they probably had all the songs written, but they were changed to match the releases. So yeah, let's go through my notes, talking about my favourite tracks, my least favourite tracks, and then my overall thoughts and a score out of 10, as we're gonna do for all of the album reviews that we do on this podcast. But yeah. Straight out off the bat, the first single that they dropped for this, People, is probably the heaviest song that the 1975 has ever done, and that is not a taster for this album in the slightest. It's so abrasive, and it's kind of I'm getting a lot of Idols vibes from this song. If anyone hasn't heard Idols, please go check them out. Their past 2 albums, solid and super cool live. But yeah, People is probably one of my favourite 1975 songs to date. And that's the thing with this album. There's a lot of songs that I'd say are some of the best that they'd ever done, but there's also just a lot of I've seen a few reviews where they've said that there's a lot of filler in this album. It is quite long. It's 1 hour and 20 minutes, but we'll get onto that. I just want to quickly mention that there's a massive. They've got Greta Thunberg at the start of the album, and it kind of works because they've preached about that stuff in their music before, but it's just kind of funny. It starts off with these pad synths, and then it's just we're in a climate disaster. It's it works. It's cool. Oh, Greta, what a queen. Yeah, it starts off really well, and then People happens, and then the genres bounce around this album like crazy. But if you had to sum it up, you'd probably say it was more electronic. The electronic elements on this album stand up loads more than they have before. Straight away from People, we're like going into an interlude. Actually, we're going into I think it's called The End. Yeah, brackets Music for Cars, which is what this whole album cycle's titled. And then we're into after that we're into another single that we've had, Frail State of Mind, which is it's a decent track. It's not one of my favourite songs on the album. It's okay. It's one of the many songs on this album that are just fine, that are just there. They're just okay. They're not bad. They're not great. It's just okay. And then the middle of this album is quite dull, if to say the least. There's a lot of good stuff that I like about this album, but this section of it is not. The next handful of tracks are really not that amazing. The Birthday Party is really kind of boring. Nothing really happens. It's not a bad song. It's just, yeah. And then after that, we have one of the first of my least favourite tracks on the album. Yeah, I Know. Which, it's a strange one because it's weird. It's got this really strange hook in the chorus where it's just like, hit that shit, hit that. It's just like, the one thing that's cool with the 1975 songs is the lyrics are usually quite prominent, and that song, just as much as it's just trying to be like an electronic banger, it doesn't. It's one of the songs that this album could just do without. Like, it could just not be there, and it would be the same. Your experience wouldn't have been worsened by getting rid of that song. And then after Yeah, I Know, we get just a couple of forgettables. Like Jesus Christ 2005, God Bless America, besides from being one of the best song titles I've heard all year, it's kind of cute, little ballady. Yeah, better than The Birthday Party, a bit more exciting. Still one of my favourites, but it's okay. And after that, we get this this song called Roadkill, which I'd consider to be the worst song on the album. It's got this really cheesy, like, modern, overproduced country instrumental, and his voice in, like, Matt's voice in the verses are just really, like, grating. It's really irritating, and the whole song's supposed to be like this memoir of, like, being on the road and, like, being away from home, but also, like, enjoying your experience. And I'm not vibing with that, Matt. I'm just not vibing. It's not one of my faves, I must admit. It is, as like I said, I'd consider it the worst song on the album. And then I'm actually reading my notes as I'm going, and the next track on the album, the Me and You Together song. I could not, for the whole time I listened to that song, and I've re-listened to specifically that song to try and change my opinion, because as much as I do like it, it just sounds so much like McFly. It's such a throwback to the 2000s. The lyrics don't reflect that at all. Like, they're a lot more sadder than the instrumental wants you to think. But the instrumental is so McFly. It's hilarious. It's so funny. But yeah, I didn't mind it. And it's another one that's just there. It's just there. But yeah. And then I think there's something you should know. It's probably one of the ones I actually like. The next segment of the album, if I'm gonna split it up into segments, I feel like that's probably the best way to review this album. Like, it does feel like probably about 4 different sections. It feels like it's an album of, like, quarters. So at the start, the second quarter was a little bit kind of dull and kind of sleepy, and then the third quarter kind of lifts it up a bit. I consider the best songs to be in this section of the album. you've got Nothing Revealed, Everything Denied, which is a really interesting concept for a song. It's got this really cool instrumental. Like a lot of when the electronic instrumentals on this album are good, they're really good. Like they're solid and they sound cool and fresh and something that the band's not done before. Which whenever a band does that, you have to. Obviously, it doesn't work sometimes, but you have to respect the principle. And when they get it right here, it does sound good. And that's one of the songs that I did really enjoy. Like I said, I enjoyed. I think it's something you should know. Tonight, I Wish I Was Your Boy. When it starts off with these pads, but when it kicks in, the groove is awesome. Like the snare sound on that song is so cool. It's just this straight up just pop. It's amazing. I love it. Shiny Collarbone. I did write some notes about this one specifically. It has a good groove, but the sample is really hit and miss. It feels like a song that I could really enjoy, but I don't. I could really like it, but I'm like a few production choices off really enjoying it. Like, yeah, as I say, it feels like a song that I could really enjoy, but I just don't. And I feel like a lot of this album kind of reflects the same opinion. Like a lot of like hardcore night. Like if you've been a fan of this band, like a big fan, like a lot of people were from day one, I don't think this is your album unless you just like whatever they put out, which, you know, that's fair enough. But you know, you're gonna have to stray from the path sometimes if you want to be a relevant artist, and that's what they're trying to do. People are gonna love or hate parts of this album, and I do really like the drop in Shiny Collarbone. Like I say, it has some really interesting elements, but again, there's some bits that I'm not a big fan of. And then later on in the album, after Shiny Collarbone is what I'd consider the best song on this album. If you're too shy, let me know. Like, it flows straight into that song, and that song's just... I feel like the 1975 are at the strongest when they just make really good, catchy pop songs that are, like, infinitely better than most pop songs that you hear. Like, you had it on the last album with songs like... what's it called? It's Not Living If It's Not With You. That song is so good. They're songs that if they'd come out 30 years ago, they would be even more appreciated than they are now. And I mean, my favorite song that they've ever done is is on their last album called Love It If We Made It. Like, I just love how that song is so lyrically relevant, but also it grooves. But the vocal delivery is so intense and just it really gets you. But when they do pop songs like this, I really enjoy it as well. I feel like that's one of their strongest elements. And then not long after Too Shy, we have this instrumental called Having No Head, which is all done by the drummer. It's all this electronic instrumental, and it's cool. It's a welcome addition to the track listing here. It's one of the... Out of the electronic cuts, I'd say this is probably the best one of the lot. It is a bit long, maybe, but there is... it's not the same thing throughout as electronic songs can fall into the trap of and then be like, it's textual. No, this song does develop, and it's good. I enjoyed it. What's after that? The end, like, if we talk about the end quarter, it's mostly electronic songs, and mostly the ones that aren't that interesting. Like, Don't Worry, quite boring. It's got a massive Bon Iver vibe, but, like, it sounds like a Bon Iver song that I wouldn't like. It sounds like one of the Bon Iver songs on 22 Million, which I'm not... Contrary to what a lot of Bon Iver fans think, I'm just like, I'm not a big fan on that album. Shoot me, but I'm just not a big fan, and it sounds like one of the songs that would be on that I'm just like, not really sure. I do really like the last track on the album, Guys, but if you look at all of the other songs that were classed in like the last quarter, from like Playing on My Mind or like Too Shy, if you let me know, onwards, It's better than most of them, and it's not electronic, and it's a welcome end. But it's it's quite a strange album, this one. I wasn't expecting it. But in terms of like my favourite songs in the album, like going through the track list there, I really like Too Shy, People, Nothing Revealed, Something You Should Know, Tonight I Wish It Was Your Boy. I like Shiny Collarbone, but I wish it was... I'm not going to include that one in my favourite tracks. It has potential to be in there. I really like Having No Head and Guys. They're probably my favourites. In terms of the tracks I dislike on this album, probably Yeah, I Know. I'm not a big fan of that. Roadkill's the worst song of this album, in my opinion. Bagsy Naughty Net is... I was so excited for that song. I thought it was going to be a song about like childhood and like, because he's from Manchester, I thought that it'd be about like coming up from a place like that, but I just didn't get that vibe, that connection. I just didn't get it. So I was kind of disappointed with that song, but more because of what I was expecting it would be. So I guess that's not as fair as I could be. And then Don't Worry Again is quite boring. In terms of my overall thoughts for the album, if you, like me, felt that the 1975 needed to keep straying away from the norm that they started to do on Brief Inquiry, then you could very well enjoy this album. But if you wanted more of their second LP, I Like It When You Sleep, plus the long title, I can't be bothered remembering it now, then if you really like that album and you wish they'd strayed down that path, this album might not be for you. It is different, it is experimental, and for a mainstream band it is quite refreshing. Quite a few bangers, quite a few good songs that I'm like genuinely impressed with, and quite a few songs that I will come back to, and quite a few that will make it into like my playlists and stuff. Some tracks that are bad, and quite a few duds, quite a few just like, you know, two time on the last album where you just kind of like it's all right. Or Be My Mistake probably is a better example, where it's like, it's okay. Nah. A lot of that kind of feeling after the song. Although I can't say that I had a bad time overall. I just had lots of oh, that was really good, and then the next song comes on and I'm like, oh. It was just a bit too long as well. I hate it when albums are too long. I think that's probably one of the main things that you'll come to hear me say when I'm talking about albums on this podcast, is I hate songs that are too albums even that are too long. Like, I love songs that are long, and if an album justifies its length, like an album can be 2 hours if it stays interesting for the 2 hours. But if you've got an hour and a 20-minute album and you've got 6 songs that just aren't that interesting, it's probably one of my biggest criticisms, because my score is based on my enjoyment of the whole album. And if you've got a fair few songs on there that I'm just not interested in, my enjoyment is gonna... If the album feels like it drags, then my score is gonna be lower, because I'm just not enjoying it as much. Sorry, guys. But if I gave Brief Inquiry a 7, and I don't think this album is as good as that, then I'm gonna have to give this one a 6. Because I don't think it's... 7 is good, 5 is meh, and 6 is okay. And I'd say that this album is okay. Solid 6 out of 10. Goes on the 6 out of 10 wall on the side. But yeah, not one of the best albums I've heard this year. Not one of the most interesting pop albums I've heard in a bit. Yeah, and if they want to carry on going down this path, I'm more than for that, because they could make some really cool stuff. They're a cool band, and I don't... As much as people say that this album's bad and it's quite filled with filler, I agree with that to an extent. But yeah, solid 6 out of 10 from me. And I think that concludes my review of Notes on a Conditional Form. Is it a conditional form or is it conventional? that concludes my review on Notes on a Conditional Form. We made it. We got there. But yeah, if you have any thoughts on the album, let me know in the comments. And then if you have any requests for anything else I should review, doesn't even have to be music, also let me know in the comments. You can like, subscribe, share, all of that jazz. I know last week I told you what the next episode was going to be, but I'm not sure what the next episode is going to be this time. I'm not going to lie. I've finished uni now. I finished my degree. We popped the champagne. So I might be doing 2 episodes a week instead of 1, which will be exciting. Yeah, I'm not sure what the next one's going to be. I was thinking about doing a hot take episode about why I prefer Animals by Pink Floyd to The Dark Side of the Moon, but I'm scared of the backlash that's going to get. So, yeah. We'll see. It very well might be another music one though. Instead of doing something that's just come out, like I've done Clone Wars and this album, I might revisit something that I'd consider perfect, like a 10 out of 10 film or album or something, like a classic. I might label it like a classic, but we'll see. We shall see. But yeah, that's concludes my review of Notes on a Conditional Form. Yep. Like I said, like, subscribe, do all that. Yeah. Episode 2, Listen to the Drummer. See you later. In a bit.